Welcome, everyone, to Elevate with V. So excited to be here with you. This podcast was inspired by my own healing journey. I aspire to share amazing, inspiring souls to help us each elevate on our journey so we can keep aligning with our soul's calling and gifts. I can't wait to introduce my guest today, Pamela. I had the pleasure of connecting with her through Sology, and we got to meet in person at Sology Fest in December, which was amazing. It's been a joy to get to learn more about her journey with her beautiful daughter, Maddie, even though we haven't connected in a while and there's so much I still don't know about you. I'm so excited today to kind of just jump in and see where this conversation takes us. And Pamela's official bio, I love this about her so much. She's not into like labels and titles. And she's like, I'm just a middle aged mom, a single mother. I had my first ND at age 4, and now I'm a YouTuber. And I was like, Pamela, you are just too cute. I love, love, love that intro. But I was like, I kind of went to her YouTube channel and kind of pulled her intro. So I'm going to read that because I do feel like it very much captures the essence of what she is doing. And she writes, I'm just like you, riding this wave into the awakening. Suddenly, everything begins to make sense. All of the things that I didn't have words for begin to have a vocabulary. It is full of unknowns and things I didn't realize I knew. This video journal is so that you know that you are not alone. So, welcome, Pamela.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I've never been introduced before like this. That was very professional.
Thank you. Well, it's like this is what's so wonderful. Like you're a YouTuber, you have a very different way that you kind of do your YouTubes. I kind of have my own way of doing it. And I'm glad that we were able to find a way to kind of do an introduction and still allow you to be you. Cause I
Yeah.
I do love what you kind of talked about when it comes to like labels and titles. And I think so much is shifting. Like that feels very much like the old way. And it's really just we don't need to define ourselves. We're just who we are,
Right.
and I think we are transitioning, maybe not as fast as one would see, but I do love that you stay very true to that. So thank you for just, doing that for yourself and sharing that and being honest about it.
Thank you. It was actually pretty funny. I wasn't sure. Yeah, I had been trying to create some paragraph for you to be able to put it out there, but like you said, I just don't. Everything I was trying to do wasn't me. I didn't know. I don't know. I was like, I'm not sure if I know how to human anymore, because that part of humaning is like the people that ask you what you do for a living when they think they're getting to know you. It's it's these labels and titles that box us and limit us, that we're trying to break from, that I don't find, I'm not in alignment with it. So I struggled really. And I sent her an email or a message, and I was just like, I don't know what to do.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it because I do think that it's something that I do think about. It's like, we're always having to like define and present our labels and titles. And then people can just say, oh, well, okay, well, you're in quotes impressive enough, or someone I would like to work with, or you have the right degrees, or you have the right this, that, and whatever. And I think what's challenging, especially for a lot of us that are on this path where we're really kind of going inwards and kind of doing this whole journey of healing. And it's really hard. Like even when people ask me, I have a hard time with it sometimes too. Like the first time someone asked me to like create something, I'm like, I don't know what to write, because everything that was coming up was who I have been in my past,
Right.
right? And it's like, well, I'm a podcaster, but it's sort of like, what do you say, right? So
Right.
I do think that we're in a place now where there is the sense of challenging the old way that we've kind of defined things, right? And I always feel that what's important when we do these kind of things on your channel, my channel, it's about connecting to our energy, right? And to be like, do I relate to this story? Do I get what this person is sharing? And I feel it's more about that, but I think we're still in that place where we're kind of working on it. But I do want to say, I love that you stay very true to that on your channel, and you just, you do your lives and people come in, and you just allow everyone to kind of express and share, and you just kind of make it all part of your lives. And I think it's really beautiful and powerful. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much. It's been a really strange journey. I had no idea I'd be here in the way
Great.
that we are podcasting, that kind of thing.
Yes, and actually, now that you said that, let's jump right in. And I just so you know, I kind of jump all over the place just based on where the conversation is. And now that you shared that, if I understand correctly, I think you started your channel in like March of 2021. So
Mhm.
right after the pandemic.
March
So
4th.
March 4th. Okay, I love it. So
Yeah.
share like how this kind of happened. Was it just like an inspiration that came to you and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this? Like, what was your process? I'm really curious.
I was shown in actually 4 years ago, almost to the day right now. It was uh the day before solstice, 2020, winter or summer solstice. And it was the first year that they had celebrated Juneteenth as a national holiday, by the way. There was a lot that happened that year. That particular week, I mean, as a lot of you remember 2020, summer 2020. And it's fascinating that we're going back in time to this date, because a lot is in repeat this month. But not in a bad way. It's like when you're mowing the lawn, it's the double back part where there's a couple of strays that you missed. It's not and not extra work. Most of it's fun. You're like, but we are doing that. Anyway, I started to get some really strong, my daughter and I were off grid. At the time she was 5, and we had land. It was awesome. I just built a cabin for us, and some weird stuff happened in the legal system that's still happening. It's really got nothing to do with me, just that it was to do with the land I was buying. We became homeless in May 2020. And so this is explaining what your question was. It really is. Anyway, so we were thrust into society, into, because I had no other, all my resources were tied up in this land. And so we were just homeless and in the shelter and stuff like this. So we had places to go. Um, this made it though, so I no longer had something to distract me. I had fences to put up. I had 17 goats and a llama and chickens that I took care of, and in my land and all this stuff. And now I didn't have those things any longer. All of a sudden, now it was constant messages all the time. And one of those messages was that I would be is interacting with and assisting a large group of people. And I kept saying, no way. No way is that going. No, no, that does not sound like fun for this introvert. This is not something that I've never done camera time, screen time. What's it called when you talk to somebody and they look at you with the camera? I
Yeah.
still don't know what it's called. I didn't do stuff like that. I never did a Zoom meeting. I'd never done any. Why would I think I would do something like that? And they kept showing me what was going to happen. They also showed me how to raise your frequency. You start with looking at everything through the lens, like you have a filter of red, and then go up to orange, and then go up to yellow, and you go through your chakra colors, and that helps you raise your frequency. By the way, that was a really good lesson I learned then. Anyway, so then they started showing me I was going to do YouTube. And I just started, no, it's not going to happen. This went on for a year, to where I felt bullied, but not really, but kind of like it was Archangel Michael that was the most insistent and wouldn't let me sleep. Like, I compared him to that movie Ghost, when Patrick Swayze was tormenting Whoopi Goldberg.
Right.
Like, not to that extreme, but that's what it felt like, and
Wow.
then random people I've never met, a random mailman said, "Are you a YouTuber?" And somebody else, that I'd never seen before, "You ought to be a YouTuber." Just, it was like, stop. So I finally agreed to join a friend of mine, Guardian, on his channel. And I'd already decided I was going to do it. So I went ahead and did it. I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm not the face that goes in front of the camera. I'm the one behind the camera, and I had no idea what was going to occur. And here we are. Like, I just started to do it. My goal, my motivation was to help people see that they weren't alone, just like I got to find out. Being alone makes anything worse. If you're the only one doing the thing, it's not, it can be relatively easy when you're doing it with others, and I found the magic in that. And so it's still the goal to let people see that they're not alone, and then it's manageable. So I guess I answered your question. Oh, and it worked out to be March 4th, and I didn't even do that on purpose. It was on the 3/3 portal that I was like, fine. And I posted it and I did all of it, but was doing it from a phone, and I was borrowing the neighbor's Wi-Fi. So it took forever to like upload the video, that it worked out where it had gone into the March 4th. And I didn't even think about the importance of that date until afterward. But I thought that was kind of cool.
That's amazing. I love, love, love how it's like just getting the nudges. And it took you a year, because I remember when I can't remember, maybe it was the first time I connected with Todd on a podcast. And he's like, well, how long did it take you? Because it's almost sort of like all of us that have chosen this path. There's a certain level of resistance that happens. It's like, no, no, I'm not ready. No, I don't think I can
Right.
do that. And then finally we just like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna like do it. And I was the same way. I pretty much waited like 6 months. I kept saying I was going to do it, I was going to do it, but I also realized that there were things that I had to work through, right? And part of that is, um I don't know about you, and we'll get into this, but like I had just gone through my dark night of the soul, right? Like it started in March of like 2020. So,
Oh,
you're thinking,
what?
yes.
Whoa, dude.
Right. So it's like going through that process and coming out, and then having, I mean, obviously it was a download and inspiration to
Yeah.
say, kind of very much very similar to what you're sharing, Pamela. The reason I wanted to do it was because I was so alone on my journey. It was during the pandemic. I couldn't talk to a soul. Like, we're all like locked up, in our places technically, and you can't even just go hang out with friends. And at that point, I was going through so much. I also realized that the people that I ordinarily connected with wouldn't relate to my story or like what I was going through. So when I came through it, the inspiration was like, oh my goodness, there must be thousands of other people like me who've like been navigating by themselves or in the middle of it right now, or are going to be navigating this journey. So there's just all these different amazing people and tools and resources. Like, let's give this information to people so that they know that they're not alone, because
Yeah.
they might not be able to talk to a friend, they might not be able to talk to family. And so the beauty of social media, especially during the pandemic, was like, it doesn't matter where you are. Put your headphones on and just listen to whatever you want to listen to, right? Like, nobody needs to know what you're doing. um so I totally understand and relate to like what you were saying, but just this journey of like resistance, and then saying, okay, fine, I'm going to do it. And realizing that this is part of our purpose, our mission, to do this. So I just love, love, love that you shared this part of your story. And of course, here we are, a couple of years later, and you have this amazing, beautiful group of people that tune into you every week, and you get to like engage with them and remind them that they're not alone. And I love that you're very tapped into, for lack of a better word, just energetics and frequency and astrology. So I love that you like to bring all of that. And I know that we've talked before we recorded, and you're going to be bringing some of that into this today as well,
Yeah.
because of timing. So I'm really excited about that as well. But I kind of wanted to jump back a little bit into your a bio where you talked about your near death experience. Now, it sounds like you had more than one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you pick if you want to share about all of them, or you want to share about one that was probably more impactful. I'm going to throw it back to you and let you decide what you would like to share.
Okay. Well, thank you. Um, I've had more than medical science counts. Like, there's the people that were there to prove that happened, and then there were the times that you just know, and so I'll go with the medical science count of 5. And so I've had 5 near-death experiences, but as a lot of people who know me know, I was brought up in a really abusive experience. I was the 4th of 10, what ended up being 10 kids, to a very violent, aggressive, angry person. People, but in particular, my father was a very angry, violent person. And he was just in a position where he always manifested the most miserable reality for himself. And so he was constantly trying to find more financial gain, all the time. And, lottery, and he would make me line up in the hallway and look at these photographs of mansions. It's a manifest living there, and like trying to use our gifts to benefit his brokenness. And I say this with love now, but around the time that he had died, that wouldn't have been said with love. There was a lot of healing that's occurred in that time. Anyhow, one of those things that he did was he was meant to kill me, and he did when I was 4. And he beat me to death. And I remember, I'm bringing this one up, only part of the story that we can go into as deep as you want, though. The most important part of this particular near-death experience was, well, when I returned, I brought things more knowing with me than I had before, when I came back, as well as to understand how trauma is brought into our lives. Often people will assume that they were being punished for something, like some karmic punishment result for something that happened in a previous lifetime, when in fact how I experienced trauma, collecting the trauma to be had in this life, there was a table of trauma. There was a table of unhealed, unresolved issues. And the table is an example of a best way I can say what I was looking at. They and these stones of light, and each one had a different color and character, and it meant some other kind of trauma. Anyhow, when a person comes to incarnate, they heal this trauma. And if they don't heal this trauma, it gets put back on the table, right? Until it can be healed. I was presented with this table because I was meant to pass on then and come back 8 years later. That was already the plan. Like that was the soul mission. And then in this death, when it occurred, it felt as if, I can tell you what actually occurred, but it felt as if there was a new job that suddenly came off the presses, it hot off the presses, and just right now you got here just in time to do this job. That's what it felt like. Enough free wills, enough individuals, and using their free will had accelerated the journey we're on, to progress far enough through that I could do what I was going to do in 8 years, because I was going to die as that person too, and I would be a baby right now. I would be probably 3 or 4 years old. That was the plan, and I chose to come back. I knew I couldn't die early. That was like, are you sure, kind of part of the story. And at the time, I thought that was silly to even be considered as something that would dissuade me. And most of my teens and 20s, yeah, I was very angry at myself for making that choice. Anyway, why am I telling you this? This table was full of trauma, and I took a whole bunch. I said, oh, wow, let's do something about this table. This table needs to be emptied by a certain amount of time. And so I chose all of these stones. And yeah, they were heavy in my backpack, but I've carried them until I've been able to heal them. Each one of us have this. We choose our trauma. You're not being punished. You're a good person. You're resolving issues from, perhaps, very likely, not even directly connected to your energy frequency soul fragment at all. It's that you are servant, and you are here to elevate everyone. That's why we're here. And so that was the most profound part of that particular near-death experience that I brought back with me, was seeing that's how it happens.
Wow. Wow. So did you have all this awareness when all this happened, or did it come to you much later, like, oh, now I understand? Like, did you actually have the awareness while this was happening?
I did and didn't at the same time. Like, I would say that over the course of the next few years, I kind of faded in and out of understanding. Like, I felt like kind of like I was going more 3D, and then more spiritual, walking kind of thing. And it was kind of unpredictable, but it was, now looking back, you can always see the pattern when you look back. Um, I was more in the 3D immediately after some really intense physical trauma. I would be more in 3D for a time and less able to connect in a spiritual way. But um, so at those moments, I wouldn't see the trauma as the trauma that I was doing. And then even later on, knowing that 15 years old, knowing what it was and cursing myself for making the choice that I did, um, and not caring anymore. I didn't care about the people enough to finish the healing, but I couldn't get away. They were right. Suicide didn't work ever for me. I mean, like, it was hard to see people die on accident all the time. Air quotes. No one dies on accident, but it seemed, um, and people like me in that situation, I'd put a lot of effort, timing, thought, resources into the result, and always I failed. And, you know, it was due to the fact I was told you couldn't leave early. Um, and so uh I would say I always understood it. It's just that I stopped caring at different times when the burden was too much, or felt like too much at the time.
Wow. And I'm sure that there was just so much of, you know, feeling alone and not being understood, not being supported, not receiving the love, so many things. And I mean, it sounds like you were very tapped in, even as a young kid, in terms of even like your guides and team. Was that kind of, did you have like your imaginary friends and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff as
Yeah,
kids?
actually, I talked to people who passed. When I came back, I was able to communicate with those who passed away. And um, though most of my family tried to convince me that it was in my mind. And even after my grandfather died, and I passed on some information that couldn't have been known by the little me at the time. I can't remember if I was 7 or 9. I think I was 9 years old when that happened. Um, anyway, quickly after that, I became, you just wouldn't, my parents encouraged my siblings, because we were cut off from the rest of the world. It was just me and my siblings in the basement. Um, is that my parents would encourage the older siblings to like make me feel crazy, to dissuade me, tell on me when I would draw auras, to tell on me when I was doing things. But at the same time, it was such a confusing environment, because I came from a LDS Mormon family. My dad was in the bishopric, but he was also teaching us about out of body experiences. Like, eventually, by the time I was 9 or 10, he left the church and went kind of dark. But um, it's very weird dynamic that I was raised in. So yeah, I was um though once I was able to convey the information about what was needed from my grandfather, and that a whole thing had happened, I started to understand. Like, I wasn't impervious to the gaslighting of my family, but it didn't affect me as deeply as it did before, because I had that proof. Like, and it looks the same. These individuals feel the same. They're coming to be seen, someone to know their story, but mostly they just want to go. They got stuck. They got stuck caring about the people who have long gone. When you want to protect your family, you don't go. And then when they do go, sometimes you forget how to then go too. And so that's why we make the light. We form the pillar of light, and give them a place, a way to go to. Sometimes when people say go to the light, they're saying go to Venita. You know what I mean? Sometimes when they say to go to the light, they're saying go to the individual who is presenting the pillar of light. Even, and those individuals sometimes feel like that they're being um, attacked psychically, haunted. They just know that you can make the light. They just need a light to go home. That's all.
Wow. Wow. Um, so this is really fascinating about your family. I'm not going to dig too much into it, but what I was curious about is number one, with your grandparents or other people who've passed away in your family, do you feel like they were coming to like support you? That they were coming to like help you and say, hey, you might not have the love and support from your physical family, but we are here. We see
Yeah,
everything and we are here to like protect you and love you and know that you're loved and that you're doing important work kind of thing.
yeah, definitely. Especially my grandfather. I would say we didn't really see anybody in my family. We were kept really secret. You know, um, this was my mother's father, so that made it even less likely that there would be permission for someone in that side of my dad was my dad. Um, anyway, he did come around at least 2 or 3 times a year, and we did bond. We had our moments, but uh my family look at this when the first few years after he passed, and we're really confused because um the experiences I've had, the most impactful and deep and profound experiences I've had with him have been after he's passed. He's come as a mentor, as a guide, as um a bringer of other individuals who are coming as elders or guides. There are um yeah, every one of the people that have passed have their code that's meant to come through, and his in particular, he's directly connected to the Pleiadians, my grandfather, and that's why he's so profound for me. um and he's the grandfather that has some Native American heritage that I felt like had something to do with my connection with him, but I don't even know if that matters exactly. It used to. So, excuse me, I've got a cough going on.
Well, feel free to have your beverages. This is very relaxed and casual.
Dude, I got so many different water right now. Oh my goodness, you can't drink enough.
Yes,
Ah,
hydration is so important. So I think it's very interesting what you're sharing, right? Like all of this awareness of your connection with spirit and, all of these things. So what's interesting, what you shared is even though your dad was like, having your siblings kind of like make you feel a certain kind of way about your gifts, you kind of also mentioned that he was very much about like wanting to like have money and power. So he was, even though he's telling you you don't have gifts, he was still like trying to use you
yeah.
for your gifts. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah, he had some stuff that he had to heal through.
Oh my goodness. Well, kind of moving forward, and I feel like you've mentioned this before. And now that you've talked about your grandfather, I feel like I want to ask, what is the connection? I know you talked about Pleiadians, but you've referred many times to Odin. What
Mhm.
is that connection? Is that through your grandfather, or is that completely something else?
So that's two separate family lines. So through my father's line, doing the genealogy there, I I landed on Odin as my 52nd great grandfather. And the other, which makes sense. My father's line, he's like Scottish, Irish, like a lot of, they at one point they say something about English, but that's all the same little area there. But um and so that does make sense that would be because there's this real Scandinavian. And then my mother's side, her mother is Swedish, and she came here off the boat when she was 11 from Sweden. So there's this other Scandinavian line. So it's kind of weird, but yeah. You're muted.
I'm muted. Well, it's interesting. I was asking about Odin, but I realized a lot of people might not actually know who Odin is. Do you want to share a little, just something, a few little tidbits about Odin?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconception of who Odin is. And so I encourage anyone who's interested to like dig a little deeper than what you see on the surface, because there wasn't a period where a group of individuals that were kind of hate group took on this character and be something completely different. If you go back in history, not very far even, you'll find that there were over 600, well over 600 names for Odin. Um, he was the first example of Gandalf the Wanderer, and like the wizard who wanders from place to place to help. This particular individual was thought to be immortal, some kind of god, and lived and spent most of the time in like the home center, in a more Nordic kind of environment. That's the place of the people of the blue eyes. The blue eyes were never seen before. Um, and this is a whole thing about blue being the code of spirit that you can really jump down a big rabbit hole. However, he presents himself as all father, just as Mother Mary, if you combine and understand Mother Mary as also Gaia, as also this lunar energy, as also, then you have all mother, right? And so Odin calls himself all father, and so it's a representation of many. And so there's a lot to it, but a lot of really big codes been coming out this past year as a result of this. It's surprising how much of this language is still woven in our everyday use of the language.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And I don't know, I just have been feeling like Odin has been coming up a lot,
Yeah.
just kind of all over the place in the past couple of months. So I definitely wanted to share that in case it comes into someone's awareness as they're like listening or they want to look it up. And I love that you have a connection there as well. So I wanted to ask you about, I know that you've been on kind of a slightly wild adventure this past year. A lot has shifted and moved around. Obviously, I'm grateful that you have landed in a place that is your home now and
Yeah.
you're settled. But I feel the need to bring this up because I feel that there's some parallel for me right now, but there might be for other people too, because am feeling very much the energies are really forcing people to just really reevaluate and be like, simple things like, do you really need this? Is this important? Like, really, so much is coming to the surface. And it's funny that I'm saying this, but I almost feel like you have been going through things before others are experiencing it. It's almost like you need to experience it and then you get to share because people are then ready to step into some of those things. So,
Mhm.
anyways, that's what's coming to me. So I was just like, oh, let's find out from Pamela what that was. How did that happen? Because, it's not been that long. It like things have moved
Right.
very fast for you in the past. What is it, like a year?
Yeah. Well, um, to answer the last part of your question first, I was told I'm called what's called a pre-waiver. And so this is something that I was made to understand actually during this journey that we're going to talk about. And because I asked, I'm like, why is it I always do stuff first? Like, why can't someone else just do it first? And even down to in a small group in a Zoom Friday meeting, it's not being recorded or aired. It never is. And so only the people that are present are hearing what's being said. Even speaking it in a group like that, all of a sudden, then all the other YouTubers start to speak it. Like someone has to say it first, do it first. And so this also includes a lot of the ascension symptoms. I'll feel maybe not as intense as some people. I'll feel things first. And so I actually knew that this journey was going to happen when I was 14. That was another near-death experience that had happened. And I knew that I would be living here, or actually within the line of the solar eclipse. I knew that I didn't know about the solar eclipse back then, to be, I found out about that later on. However, I knew I was meant to be underneath the line of it. The person that had offered to have us come live there didn't know about the solar eclipse until we had already planned it. And I just assumed that it was the right place because it felt correct. And it was. Anyway, I knew I was meant to be there my 40 by my 45th birthday, which is March 27th. And that's right before the eclipse at this time, and when I was 14. Progress forward 2018/19, it was the winter. The channeling through songs started to become like ridiculous. It just wouldn't stop. I was constantly singing channeled messages, and it was just me and my little like 4-year-old, 3-year-old, like in the little cabin that we built in the middle of the woods. And I'm singing these messages, and part of the message, and it came through a bunch of different times, but part of that message was basically, I won't quote it. The message was, you need to unburden yourself of the stuff. The stuff that is when we moved at that time to where we were at that moment. I had left the vast majority of my belongings, but I brought all of her stuff and more, just with the attempt of wanting her to feel comfortable, right? And then it became these false anchors. Like I had totes of her baby clothes that I'll give her one day, and just stuff that doesn't actually matter. Like one day I'll make a quilt of all of her clothes, and like, anyway, and I kept saying nothing treasured, nothing lost. This could come at quite the cost. So like, then I understood that I was supposed to be getting rid of my things. I didn't actually, and they kept saying, get ready, get ready. And I'm like, I'm ready. I wasn't ready. I had been collecting more and more things since then. At this point, this was just November last year, that we ended up having to accelerate the process. And I had the warnings, I had the heads up. They kept saying, get ready. And I kept saying, I'm ready. Well, I still hadn't been relocating any of these things. And, like I had it in my head that I couldn't dispose of anything. I had to find somebody that could use it, and like, it didn't do anyone any good. It was a false anchor. And me transferring a false anchor to somebody else is giving them a false anchor. You know what I mean? Unless it's something that's really needed. So then we were in the corridor of the eclipses, and the lunar one happened. Just then, all these people came. There had been fires that had taken out people's families' homes. And a few of them had just barely gotten apartments, but they had no toys for their children. Like this one family, like there was no way that they were going to be able to buy Christmas. And my daughter had a whole toy store in her bedroom. Like she had so much stuff that she never, ever, ever played with, just to be clear. Like this is stuff that she dusted, like, and we were able to give dishes and beds, and I was able to give away my truck. I wasn't going to drive this far, and then now that person for the first time in years has been employable. He's kept a job because he can make it to his job, like there are these beautiful gifts that got to happen. And so I left with 3 suitcases and 2 boxes. And I went to a city of 3 million people in the middle of nowhere is what it felt like. And it was the most brilliant reset that I would never want to do again.
I love that. But it's exactly what you needed, right? It's
Yeah.
exactly what you needed. And you had to navigate through that. And I love that you're sharing this because I feel like myself and many others are in that place right now. We're like at a choice point. And, I feel that it's really important to say that no choice is wrong. You
Right.
always get to choose. but you're going to know in your heart like what's the one that's going to empower you a little bit more. But you get to choose, right? Like no judgment. And it's so interesting because I feel like I'm in that same spot right now where the universe is giving me that opportunity, but I've got to purge, I've got
Right.
to release. And I'm just like, whoa, this is a lot. And
Yeah.
I love the synchronicity because as I'm clearing and going through things, just like you said, it's like the universe always presents something, right? Because you're like, oh, because I'm like so mindful. I want to be like, I don't want to just throw things out. I want to make sure it goes to people that will appreciate it and
Right.
all this stuff, right? And then I see this message about someone who's talking about, all of these people that have come to this country that have like nothing. They have absolutely nothing, and he wants to help them. And I'm like, oh my goodness, wow, here's a window. And I
Cool.
reach out to him and I said, you mentioned a couple of things. He's like, listen, I just wanted to put a few things. They need everything. So suddenly it just kind of gave me this kind of inspiration of like, I don't need to look at this as like a burden, but it's like, wow, kind of how you were saying, it's like, oh my goodness, this could actually like assist others that are so grateful to receive all of these things that you need to sort of purge anyways, but now you know that there's a place for it to go, where it's going to get utilized, and it's going to be, just so powerful. So thank you for sharing that, because I think that's really important. And I love that I was sort of like, oh yeah, you're always like a little bit ahead of the curve, and you're like, yeah, I'm always like the pre-waiver. I'm like, I love it.
It's weird, but it just how it works out.
Oh my gosh, but kind of coming back to your story, because I kind of just jumped in to just share that how, I'm just really connecting to like what you're sharing. So then you kind of like do this move and you've just limited items and you're moving to this big place. So then what happens next?
Well, we the last thing that we were told, we went there to we were participating in a group thing that was occurring at the time, and the last thing that the person that was supporting us there said to me was, don't take the bus and don't go to the laundromat. And I was all on my own for a month. And so I struggled all of a sudden being in the density of a 3 million population city. I left a town where they turned off the stoplight at 10 p.m., the stoplight, right? And like, and and now all of a sudden I'm in this city that it never gets nighttime because there's lights everywhere. People are putting lights on their trees and everything too, even though, and then um and so I had to go through some type of it felt like a dark night of the soul. I had to go through this weird, like, because I was in the in-between place, I was waiting until after a certain window of time before I would then move on to Arkansas. And while we were there, we were doing a clearing, and there's no way we could have done any of the things that we did if we brought more things with us. Like, it worked out exactly as we were meant to. It's crazy, where how perfect it was, and like, I mean, I didn't plan that with this brain, it's how it worked out. And the series of activations and uncoding and discovery that had occurred during that time couldn't have been replicated in any other way. Um, Simultaneously, though, my apartment, I had paid for another month, and I had somebody who knew other people who wanted more things. I didn't expect her to clean my apartment at all. Like, that wasn't the thing. There were still things there, and there were still people who were interested. Go grocery shopping is kind of, or go shopping is kind of how I was taking it. This is interesting to point out because you can tell the moment that it got completed because the energy that shifted in that moment. Suddenly, the reset that I was experiencing in Houston wasn't nearly as unpleasant. As soon as the last of the physical anchors, even though they weren't really belonging to me anymore, and they were across, the entire country, because we went from Washington State down to Houston, Texas, like that. I've never been this far east. You could tell, though, that was what's most fascinating. As soon as that occurred, she sent me a video to show me that the apartment was completely cleaned out. and here you go. Now you can get your rental deposit. You're welcome, kind of thing. It was really amazing. Right before that happened, I felt the shift. I felt it. Like all of a sudden, the lightness came in, and why why did I carry those boxes around for so long? There was this one box that had my name on it, and I knew it was important. My mom said it was important. I never opened it. I opened it and went through page by page and found drawings that I had drawn since the age of 3, one at a time, going into the fire, and like I was just like, why is this something that I supposed to carry with me? Yeah, the art was impressive for someone in that age group. It's never going to come out of the box again. There's no point in taking it. I had my baby blanket. Why did I have my baby blanket? It doesn't do any good to anyone. Like, these things got to get burned, and I enjoyed it, and one thing at a time. I found they were false anchors. They anchor us and make us feel trapped, stuck in the life that we're leading, stuck in the 3-8D way, our 9 to 5 mentality. And if we can eliminate what limits us, then we no longer have limitation. And so, one thing at a time, one page into the fire at a time. It can take a lifetime, or it can take an afternoon, but I do agree with you that those who are succeeding at this time are being guided to follow this example.
I got chills, Pamela. Yes, 100%. And I think part of it is there's this push for exactly what you're saying, releasing all of these. I love the word that you used. Did you say false anchor? You used a word. I was like, yes, that's it. It's a false anchor. And it's almost sort of, it's actually more fear-based, right? Because it's almost like these things are grounding us in place, but it's like not in a good way,
Mhm.
right? Not in a good way, not in a positive way, because it's actually holding us back from that freedom, the choices that kind of like, hey, I'm ready to step into more, because we got to just holding on to these things, not being able to release it. And imagine trying to drag all of it with you. Like, it just doesn't work. It
No.
just doesn't work. So I love what you shared, because you could have made some different choices. You really could have, but you're like, nope, this is crazy. It's a little wild. I'm getting pushed into all of these spaces and places that I don't have a comfort level in, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then it's like, when you've done it and then you're kind of on the other side, you're like, oh my God, thank God I did that. I can't imagine going back to that anymore. Like, it was part of your journey and you're grateful, but you also understand standing or sitting where you are now, looking back, saying, oh my gosh, this all makes complete sense.
Yeah.
and and it's so important right now, and I'm definitely getting that message very loudly that, yes, it's time. Just release, 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 release. And I had mentioned this earlier, but when people connect with you, when this podcast comes out, please go check out one of her lives with, it was her, Stacy, and Elsa. My goodness.
That was
I
fun.
that that live was so powerful for me, and so many synchronicities. And it's literally like exactly what I needed to hear. And I was like literally experiencing things as you guys were talking. Obviously, I was listening to a recording because I didn't catch it live, but it was all like just happening in that moment. And it just reminds me so much about how you and I both are about, like, just reminding people that they're never alone, and that so many of our journeys are so intertwined. Like, we are all doing this together, and we might not be experiencing everything in the same moment, but even for someone like Pamela to almost kind of like say, sure, I'll raise my hand, I'll kind of go through the crap first and then share with others, so that they don't have to have the same load. Like, they can be like, hey, wow, she just gave me some tips, so it might be easier for me. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So and there are a lot of us that are kind of doing that. So thank you, because that was, I mean, all of your lives are amazing, but that one, just because it's the latest one that I've listened to, was very like powerful for me. So
Thank you.
kind of coming back. I'm, obviously now you're in a place where you feel like you're at home, you're kind of building, you feel like everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. You and I talked a little bit, and you talked about, getting some very powerful like messages about what's happening right now and going to be coming up in the next couple of days and weeks. So I want to make sure to give you time to kind of share about that, because I feel like it's really important. So I'm just kind of hand it back to you, Pamela.
Okay, thank you. Um, so I've been getting for some time, there's been a lot of Father's Day code. Father's Day for, um, I don't know if it's different by country, or if this is a holiday that's only observed. Technically, it's a US holiday or something like that. Though the 16th of June is this year's, 2024's Father's Day. Anyway, there's been a lot of the Father's Day disclosure kind of stuff about this day, and I knew it was important. I knew we were preparing for it, and I also knew we were going to get a solar flare that day. By the way, the story is not an event story like a lot of individuals are trying to share. um Sensationalized stories aren't always meant on purpose to be a misguidance, but it's not how I see it. I understand it is occurring, yeah, but it's done in a gradual way. So just like we got that event a couple of weeks ago, we're going to have a couple more, and we're having small ones in the middle from the sun to help us. One of those occurrences is going to be impacting us on Sunday. So I had a council of energies come to me the night before last, and they were very clear that it was time for me to prepare my body and to be prepared for Friday. I have been, just like everybody, I've been eating more junk food the past couple of days, weeks even. It's been something I've been slowly doing more and more of. Um, I would say slowly doing more and more of since we left Washington. Our lifestyle habits have diminished, but we've been kind of in suspension. We've been in this stasis place where we've been a guest since November 1st, everywhere we went. Anyway, so finally now with the stabilization, now it's time to get back to eating more appropriately, as well as other types of consuming. One thing that they pointed out is I like this game Rummy Cub. It's like it's like a card game that you play with other people on the internet. So it's a live game. And I like this game. I've always liked this game. And I've started to play it obsessively. And they were like, you need to stop. So it's not a saying anyone should stop playing video games. It's overindulgence, especially with devices, screens. Um, and prepare yourself like you would for a spiritual ceremony on Friday. And it was really a big deal. I changed a lot of things in my life overnight. I actually haven't played Rummy Cub since, but um, I have like 48 hours, 48 days worth of hours logged in playing that game over the course of the past year, especially over the past 6 months. Anyway, it's ridiculous. They're right. And this is just like you would do for any other spiritual ceremony. A lot of people will fast for 3 days. A lot of people will then be more intentionally aware of what they're eating for 3 days. Typically, it's a 3-day window. If you're doing intentional fasting, I suggest that you definitely follow whatever guidance is healthy for your body type. Everybody has different types of bodies and metabolisms and stuff. What I'm doing is I'm just not going to be eating anything that's processed. I've gone back to I tend to eat ingredients rather than making meals for myself. Like I'll go have an apple or a banana, or I steam some Brussels sprouts. I'm eating just the Brussels sprouts. That's back to what I've been doing. And the level of water that my body is taking in right now is unheard of. I have nothing to compare it to. It's shocking how much my body wants water right now. I got all of this information, and then it turns out while I was waiting to come onto this call, I actually didn't realize how much was happening on the 14th. there's a lot in like that's the Mercury Cazimi is happening that day. That's a conjunction of Gemini. Um, Sun in Gemini is conjunct Mercury in Gemini. So it's a Mercury Gemini Cazimi. Like this is a really big deal, and so and then the window that they talked about was the 16th through the 22nd, which is a full week. But then they said be ready by Friday, so that's 2 days more. So anyway, just letting you all know, letting you know too, this is a window of time that's not to be scary. It's not, oh no, but this is the time, okay, start thinking about your body. Have you had probably too much time on the couch and not enough time going for walks? Maybe right now it's time to kind of open up your body in this way, or, qigong, dancing, even cleaning your house is a really good exercise, and just getting your body to flow and to move. And when it comes to belongings, items, stuff, something I've learned, because now I get to live the minimalist life that I've really, we're not dirty people, but we always felt like it because there was never any place to put our stuff. There's always piles and stacks. And anyway, is that without piles, without stacks of stuff around you, it's crazy how much clearer of a channel you become. It's true. It really is. That's why, well, I'm not the only reason, but going into nature, you're no longer, your energy field can reach really far. And if your energy bubble reaches out and touches like the stack of all the National Geographic since the 50s, you know what I mean? That none of us want to throw away, or that's probably what's shifting the poles, is the disproportion of all of the trees piled up in everybody's backyard and their storage units of National Geographic. But letting yourself open your bubble, then you can be clearer channel, and it's easier to get the messages that are already divinely being offered you now. And so these messages are increasing now, is what I'm trying to say. And so to follow this guidance of relinquishing some of the belongings that maybe aren't exactly assisting you, or at the very least finding a place that you can spend your time, where you can make it so you can reach out your arms in every direction and not be able to touch something. And that would be your bubble. Like that would be the place I'd go to for inspiration, for meditation, for guidance. So I don't know if I kind of jumped somewhere else there. I hope that's okay.
Absolutely. No, it made perfect sense to me. So I'm sure everybody tuning in be like, okay, sure. Yeah, we're gonna look at these things. And I love what you said, because you kind of also relating it to not just physical stuff. This is everything, right? It's physical, mental, emotional, all of the things that we overindulge in, or we know are like things that we could do better with, let's just say that, right? And so it's just such a great reminder, and it's like you said, the energies are coming in to support that. And part of it also sometimes, and I think you alluded to this, I know I have certainly experienced it, where we all get messages and we don't necessarily pay attention to them. And if we keep getting them and we're not really doing anything, then it's going to come in a way that might not necessarily be very pleasant.
Right.
So
I said, sit down.
and I think that's a little bit of what we're sharing too. And the thing is, we've each been through it. I know I've been through it. You've definitely shared that you've been through it. So this is again a way of sharing with others that it's not just what we're saying, it's paying attention to the messages that you are receiving.
Yeah.
And all of us do, right? And it's a question of how tuned in to it we are, whether we're choosing to listen or not to listen. And all of this kind of plays a part. And I think to me, it's about what would I like to experience? Like, that's what I keep reminding myself. I ask myself that question, right? Because we always have free will in every situation. It's like, what do I want to experience? Do I want to experience more freedom? Do I want to experience more joy? And if the answer is yes, well, you kind of have to help yourself in
Right.
that. It's not just all magically going to happen. I mean, you will get support, but you in this 3D world, and I keep getting reminded, you have to take action. That's just kind of how it works. You will
Mhm.
get the nudges, you'll get the information, but you have to take the action, and then you will get more support for
Right.
what you're trying to do, right? So at least that's been my experience. And I feel like you're kind of saying the same thing,
Oh yeah.
Pamela.
Oh yeah, definitely. And these nudges will get louder and louder, and sometimes it feels like a punishment. Like the examples I see the most frequently is somebody needs to pull away from the 9-5 for just a little bit, you know, and they don't. And so then they sprain their ankle, and then they blow out their knee, and then they blow out their hip. And then, and this is somebody who's younger than I am, a very healthy individual. This particular story I'm telling, eventually she got her car totaled. She got slammed into a building through an icy uh intersection, T-boned into an old church made of brick, and still was hobbling to work the next day. Ridiculous, right? And then ended up getting full body cancer. And then was ready to stop. Went ahead and did the castor oil, blessed castor oil, and all cancer is gone. Gone. But she also did what she was supposed to. She stopped. She took the moment and she went into a place of meditation. We are taught, conditioned to be distracted all the time, and that this word boring, that word isn't a real word. It's an invention to establish the addictive response, to need a constant, and the consuming of social media, consuming of news, consuming of any of these things. That's consumption as well, and choosing what frequency you're bringing in. You had a different point. Oh, I wanted to bring up, they explained it to me why. Part of the intentional behavior model that they created had to do with what we call now, what they're calling pill mentality. The pill mentality is that they've taught, whoever they are, they're not here anymore, so it doesn't even really matter. Is they've taught people, the masses, to expect an immediate result. You pay a quantity of whatever it is that we're calling money at that time, and then they get this thing and they're supposed to just take the pill and then they're better. And this has been a farce, a false truth that's been carried along through a lot of these medical facilities and stuff. 10 years later, you find out what you've actually done to your body with that pill. That's not the point, though. It's taught, like the weight loss pills instead of exercising, you know, the the behavior modification pills, rather than just don't drink caffeine anymore, you're fine. Everybody, our bodies tell us what to do, and we've been conditioned. It's not a laziness, it's not a character flaw, it's you're following the program you've been taught to. It's simply now unteaching. The unlearning part that Yoda talks about is now. We're unlearning so we can then learn, and that, yeah, it does take discipline. And discipline doesn't have to be a scary, set, freaky word either, like discipline meaning I am not going to have sugar today, or I am only going to have this much of it today is an easier one to do, and I'm using the word sugar because that's something that I'm doing in my world. Like it doesn't have to be what you're doing. And there's sugar in orange juice, but I don't count it because it's natural.
I agree, because I love what you're sharing, because it's just like little small things. I mean, even like what you're just saying, and I want to say this because you talked about orange juice, like how fruits have been demonized. Like, oh,
Mhm.
that sugar is terrible for you. Stop eating fruits. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
That's probably one of the most healthy things for your body. Now, again, I can't like blanket statement because I don't know everyone's like medical situation, but for people to say that, oh, I stopped eating fruit because it's like bad for my body. I'm like, who told you that? Like,
Right.
did you do your own research? What does it feel like in your own body when you eat something, but there's this thing, it's like just bombarded with all of this information. And like you were saying, I have compassion because it's so confusing to navigate,
Yes.
literally, like you're saying, orange juice is so great for you. The next day, someone's gonna be like, it's the worst thing for you. You're like, well, what
Right.
is it? Which one is it? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? But this is part of that whole thing of coming back to self. And yes, there's always going to be information that's going to be out there. It's going to, there to either distract us or help us, but we have to use our discernment. That's one of the most important things, is to strengthen that muscle of what is right for me, you know, because that's what it comes down to. Nobody knows your body like you do.
Yeah.
Nobody knows your life like you do. So you are constantly being presented with information, but you get to choose,
Mhm.
and then you experience based on what you're choosing. And that example that you gave of that person who's going through just nonstop getting messages and still, like, choosing something else until it gets to a point where it's like, whoa, where have I come in my journey? And to some degree, all of us have been there, right? Like, to me, that's part of the dark night of the soul. It's like you keep getting messages, you don't really pay attention, you justify, you're like, no, it's fine, this, that, whatever. And then the universe is like, really sorry, but now I kind of have to just give you the big one, because I
Right.
need for you to stop. I need for you
Right.
to really stop and really reevaluate what is happening. And that whole process, that whole journey is literally about this. It's like deconditioning, peeling all those layers off to really get back to that part of you that's, kind of like, I don't even know how to say, it's like that sort of like very beautiful, clear version of you without all of these layers that were kind of like surrounding us all of our life, right? And it's
Mm.
sort of like coming back to those layers and getting to choose what you want to create. So it's a process, and it's not going to happen in a day, but there's so many beautiful things that come out of it when you step into that place of empowering yourself and making those choices that support you and in your journey. Because in you doing that and sharing that, it allows other people to also feel like, oh wow, okay, I can do that, I can relate to that, yeah, that connects with me as well. So I mean, there's just so much that you and I are like sharing and talking about that's like so interconnected, but I
Yeah.
think they're really important messages to get out there. And obviously with Pamela sharing like what's coming up, this is another reminder. And I was joking with her because I was like, are you kidding me? It's like my birthday week. I'm just like wanting to eat all these other things. And now you're telling me I'm going to have to like look at
I
possibly
know.
like fasting a little bit.
I just went shopping, man. And I bought donuts this time. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, my body's wanting this, and everyone else is eating these kind of foods too. So it's like, but nope. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, no, absolutely. No, I love that. It's like, right, just that reminder. And it's like, it's almost sort of like we receive these messages, whatever channel it comes through, right? In that time where you're like, oh, I wasn't really paying attention to that, but thank you for bringing it into my awareness. Again, I get to choose what I would like to do, but now I know. So what am I going to do? So I know that I will definitely make some adjustments to some of my plans so that I may prepare myself to be in a place where I'm going to receive and have it be a great experience for
Yeah.
myself and my body, right?
Yeah. And I'm so happy you said the word receive, because that's the other part of the message that I failed to mention was the other part was to assist others to understand. So what's occurring is all of this stuff's being sent, and the receiving is being limited by each individual, due to a false belief and lack of worth, that I'm not worthy kind of stuff. And only taking part of the gift, only taking part of the energy, only receiving halfway. And they're talking about opening the heart and how to do this. This is kind of like the trick, the backdoor loophole kind of way. is telling self, saying aloud, I am opening my heart to receive. I am opening my heart center was what I was going to say, but you can say either one. I'm opening my heart to receive. I'm opening my heart center to receive. I am worth receiving. I know. It's like the guy smiling from Saturday Night Live stuff, but I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. But these things really do work. They said them for a reason. They were misguided in some of it, but they were right. And we speak to our water. We're more than the vast majority of your body's water, as we all know. And Dr. Emoto teaches us that when we speak kind or unkindly to water, it changes the molecular structure for a time for this water. The way the water also enters your form also shifts it, by the way. So if what I do when I get cases of this kind of water, this is the spring water, this is what we get. Anyway, and we bless the water. We talk lovingly to it. We say loving things to it. And then as we open it for the first time, we also talk to the water, and then that water's coded. That's called holy water in some circles. And then as it's in your body, speaking highly of yourself, lovingly to yourself, you're also coding the water, or you're saying things that are unkind to yourself, and you're coding the water the other way. It's true that the thoughts, these words are stronger than any other words, so you hear it here. And so when you say the thing out loud, but you don't want to believe it, and you do the list in your head of why you don't deserve it, so you can kind of counteract feeling egocentric or something, you're missing the point. So if you can allow yourself to please be kind to yourself, even just for a few minutes, this will code your water. This will code your water, and it will bring in this higher frequency that's already coming in. And then the worthiness is just enough to open your heart to receiving. You are worth receiving these gifts. That's why they're directed specifically for you. Each individual has their own coded message, own coded gift that's coming in, based on your own experience and the frequency that you're keeping. So say nice things to yourself. I mean, I know it sounds so cringe.
No, but it's so important, right, Pamela? Like it almost feels like it's so basic, but it's not. And I know we each go into that place. Like this is part of being human, right? Like where we can have these beautiful moments. Like that's why it's like a roller coaster, right? Like one day you're kind of high, and then the same day by the evening you could be in a different space. And so these tools are so important because it reminds us that we actually can shift our own energy fairly quickly if we have the awareness, right? And it's just about having the awareness that's like, okay, wait, I'm kind of going into a loop, or wait, oh my God, I just scrolled for an hour on social media and I said I was going to do that for 5 minutes, right? It's like
Right.
having the awareness in the moment and then choosing something else, right? And so I think these are all these beautiful tools. And I love the one about water because, I just think it's so important. I personally practice it all the time. Like it's part of my daily, routine.
Awesome.
And to kind of add to it, I do this when I take a shower. For those who take showers, like I do that too. Like I will, kind of like talk to the water and just say things like, oh, just, please cleanse me, please nourish me. Like, whatever you want to do. It's the same kind of thing. You're setting intentions with water, and it is truly super powerful. And but I do agree with you that there is something about the disconnect sometimes between your mind and like what you're saying. And sometimes for me, I have an issue with like affirmations because it's like, you can say things, but if you don't actually believe them,
Yeah.
then it's sort of like a mixed messaging. At least that's just my perspective. I don't want to speak for anybody else. So I'm very careful that if I'm going to say something, I really need to kind of embody it, and not just say the words and it's not something that I truly believe.
Yeah. Makes sense. I'm awesome was the one that I worked on and learned to accept.
Yeah.
Because we are all awesome. We are, and when you can pull away from the measuring sticks and labels of this false society that we've been raised in, you find out you really are awesome. You're uniquely, awesomely you. and no one else can be you like you can, and yeah, we're one. Though as the role of character that you play in this body, you are very unique. And the fact that you were one of the few really that were picked from the volunteers who wanted to come here for this time says a lot about who you are. If nothing else, that one is the one that's easiest for me to recall, that I'm the Shazad, is that, because I'll get that too. I'll go down, and then I'm reminded, because I remember that moment. Like everybody raised their hand, everybody, like everybody, and only those who were most skilled, most capable to do what we're doing were the ones picked. So if you're here, you're the elite team. Out of anything else, that's the easiest one to realize that you're the shit. Sorry, I said the swear word, didn't I?
Oh, I think it's perfectly fine. No, absolutely. And I think this is the part where like that humaning, we get so kind of into doing all these things, my checklist, my this, that, it's like that whole being. And I think what you're sharing is really about that being, that awareness of like, wow, I'm just so much bigger than all these things that I'm doing, or and it's a really beautiful reminder. So I'm really grateful that you're bringing that up, because it's almost hard to wrap our mind around, our human mind, to be like, what? Wow. Yeah. Like all the people that are here right now, like we came down with such a specific purpose. Like I literally always feel that we're all masters, and
Yeah,
we have descended to come so that we can all ascend together.
yeah. And anyone who chose to stay on the old boat are no longer in this frequency. So if you're listening to this message, you're on the boat with us. I don't like the boat idea. Let's talk about a jet instead. Boats are annoying. Boats take so long, and like everyone's just drinking all the time. Like someone was talking about a cruise, and I was like, that sounds like zero fun.
Well, I will say, I have you been on a cruise? Actually, now that
No.
you said that, no. I have been on a cruise, and it does have its very sort of fun, redeeming qualities. But I do also think that sometimes this is part of that whole, on the one hand, you can say it's like, wow, how amazing that we get to do that. But on the other hand, I do believe part of that is also sort of escaping, like a
Mhm.
whole way of kind of like numbing, or going into a space where we're taking ourselves away because we don't want to deal with
Right.
things that are like around us. So I know there's many different people would have many different versions, and I'm glad that I have cruised, but do I need to jump on a cruise? No. But I did enjoy the experience, but I also understand your perspective.
Yeah.
And the truth is, yes, we're all together kind of on this journey, and there's so much that is happening, and we are all doing the best we can. And part of like the work that you do, I do, so many people do, is really to just remind people that we're all in it together.
Yeah.
We're not perfect, we're navigating through things too, we've got storms, we've got ups and downs as well, but we're in it together. So never feel like you're alone trying to like navigate through these things, because we're all here. And I would highly encourage everyone that's tuning into this podcast, and listening to this episode, please tune in to Pamela and her YouTube channel, High Vibrations. All of her information will be in the bio section wherever this gets posted. And there's just so much amazing information that she is bringing through, and it's I love that she does it live and people get to engage and interact. So she's created a beautiful, amazing community that's like so loving and supportive. And just thank you, Pamela, for like everything that
Thank
you're doing. And I'm so grateful that we're getting to co-create together, and that we're connected, and we're sort of on this journey together, like literally virtually holding hands and saying, let's
you.
go, people, we could do it.
Yeah. And it's been so much fun to be part of this journey with you as well. It was a kind of a classic moment. No one took a video of when we first met. I ended up picking her up in an embrace. Didn't I pick you up?
Oh my goodness. I mean, you lifted me off the ground, and my first thing was like, holy smoke, she is strong, because it's not like I'm this tiny person, and so I was just like, whoa. But it was just so beautiful, for all of us that got an opportunity to actually like meet in the flesh, as they say,
Yeah.
right? And even though we didn't get to spend a ton of like one-on-one time, there's just these kind of experiences are so, it's almost like we've all sort of planned them in advance, like who needed to be there, like such important work was happening. And it's just that connection at many different levels, right? And so I'm just so grateful. It's like the way that we've all kind of co-created and said we all need to sort of be connected to each other,
Yeah.
and we're sharing similar messages. Let's all do this together. And like you were saying earlier, what I can do by myself versus what I can do when I'm in a community or in a group, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just no comparison.
Right. And if you have the choice, it makes more sense to do the community because, then you're playing, and then it's easily done and the work becomes play, it's not hard anymore.
Yeah. And actually, one of the things that I've always sensed is that kind of just with like a lot of other things, that this is kind of a false thing of separating people,
Yeah.
because it is known if people come together and they have similar thoughts and other things, we can be very powerful.
Yeah.
And so I think all of us that are kind of on this path and doing our work realize the importance of connecting and co-creating with others. And because we're doing that, I think like that is why our communities are sort of growing and building, because we're all recognizing that absolutely that is the way of, let's just say, the new earth or the new
Yeah.
frequencies that we're creating is about us doing this together.
Right. As this, yeah, this manifestation, this choice. People talk. Do you mind if I say something else? I know you're
Yeah,
closing.
please. No, no, of course.
I got this download that I was like, oh, of course. But people talk about The Simpsons able to predict the future, right? This is a thing that everybody's talking about. And you know what they told me? It's not that the future is being predicted. It's that enough viewers are watching and simultaneously manifesting what they're seeing. And they used it as an example to show us what the news does. The news is meant to intentionally garner everyone's focus and belief to manifest this reality that's chosen by whoever it is that's producing that thing. And I don't know if it's on purpose from the Simpsons end, but we do know that there's an intention presented by some other outlets, so keeping that in mind when we're consuming is probably the most precise choice. Rather than saying not doing it, just be aware. Use your own discernment. Use your own, if it's intentionally bringing up fear, chances are it's something that for me is something that my vibration doesn't want to be in the same presence of, you know. So isn't that really cool though? That's why that makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what you just said, just reminding everybody it's that discernment. Just keep coming back to like what feels right, and question, and, really be mindful of like your choices and what you're doing. And it just gets easier, right? Because it's like a muscle, right? And I think so many of us are tuned into the energetics of things, so we immediately feel, and we're like, okay, so trust that feeling, really trust your feelings and honor your feelings. And just kind of what Pamela was saying earlier, it's like we're all so powerful. We are all so powerful, and we're literally like master creators and manifestors.
Yeah.
And so remember that. And, again, it's a muscle that we're building. However, know that that's part of the gifts that we've come in with. So just keep practicing and keep creating
That's right.
whatever you're looking to create. And, we're all doing it together.
In the community that we are.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Pamela. This was so
Thank
much
you.
fun. I know you and I could have just gone on and on talking
Yeah,
about.
we probably could have. Thank you so much for having me. This has been an honor.
Oh, it's been my honor too. And it's been so wonderful. And I'm so grateful for our connection. And just want to remind all my beautiful audience to definitely go check out Pamela's YouTube, and all of that information will be in the bio section. So definitely connect with her. And I hope that this amazing, beautiful co creation has brought through lots of information that I hope is going to, assist others, and so that we can all keep elevating together. So thank you again for tuning in, and I can't wait to catch all of you on the next episode.